manner. So I'm John Hook, so I'm here from the University of York, and I'll be chairing today. I'd like to introduce you to our panellists today, one of whom, strangely, is also me. So I'll start. So I'm John Hook, so I'm a senior lecturer at the University of York, and I do research into interactive media, and I co-run something called the Digital Creativity Labs. And the main event here is Zulfiya Hamzaki, who is a postgraduate researcher at the University of York, who's exploring how interactive and responsive documentary forms can be used in archaeology, but in the future also other contexts, to give a voice and represent the views and experiences of migrant communities. And also I'd like to introduce Annabelle as well, who has been co-creating a film that's going to be spoken about today with Zulfiya, and you'll hear about that a little bit more in the talk. So what's going to happen today is we're going to give a little bit of a talk. Zulfiya is going to take mainly the lead on that, but I'll say a few words at the start. And then at the end there'll be an opportunity to ask us any questions, and we'll have a bit of a panel discussion. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Your Heritage, Your Story project. And I'll just put that slide up for a second. So just to give a bit of context before I hand over to Zulfiya. So the work that Zulfiya's been doing is part of a broader collaboration that the University of York is doing with the Council for British Archaeology. And in this collaboration, we've been exploring how a range of new digital media and digital media storytelling approaches can be used to help the CBA with their activities. So things like virtual reality, but also in this project, something that we developed at the University of York, which we call responsive interactive film. So Zulfiya will really explain what that means in her talk and show some examples. But when we say responsive film, interactive documentary, we're really talking about videos and films that don't have to be the same for everyone, but can show different things, tell different stories, arrange information in different orders based on who's watching them, how they interact, and so on. So the kind of seed of the idea for this project that Zulfiya's taken on and really run with was conversations with the CBA about what could these interactive film forms potentially help them engage, reach new audiences, broaden their membership, and so on. So we were interested at the start of this project in thinking, can potentially, for example, as you'll see today, representing different audiences, views that perhaps resonate most strongly with certain audience groups, potentially make, for example, the CBA feel like a more welcoming organisation, approachable organisation, inclusive organisation in perhaps some of the campaign and marketing materials that they use. So Zulfiya was funded by a group called XR Stories, who are a body funded by the government at the University of York, exploring new media forms and their applications, and she was funded for a year-long postgraduate research degree to explore a project in this area. And now, without any further ado, I will hand over to Zulfiya, who is the main event, who will tell you all about the absolutely amazing and inspiring work she's been doing over the current year, exploring how these forms can be used to help CBA in a really important topic that they're very committed to, which is representing the views and experiences of immigrants into the UK in heritage and archaeology.
Thank you, John. Before I get into my part of the talk, I'd like to show you all a video that Neil Redford sent us. He couldn't be here in person, so he was kind enough to just share a few words about the project, so you'll get an understanding of the context from the Council for British Archaeology's involvement in the project.
Hello, my name's Neil Redfern. I'm the Executive Director of the Council for British Archaeology. We're a charity that was founded in 1944 to help champion and promote archaeology. We're particularly interested in how we support wider public participation in archaeology. And over the last 3 years, we have been delighted to work with the School of Arts and Creative Technologies at the University of York to explore how creative and immersive media might help us both promote archaeology and improve our own fundraising. One aspect of archaeology I'm particularly interested in is how we make it relevant to society today. How do we make the archaeology of the city we live in, York, relevant to people all across the world? For me, archaeology isn't just about the stuff in the ground. It's not about the city walls or the Roman remains. It's actually about the questions we as humans want to ask about those remains. Why are they here? How did they get here? How have they survived? How did we discover them? How did we unlock them? What meaning might these remains and these features have to society today? How are they relevant to us today? But it's more than just material. It's about us as human beings and as society. And archaeology needs and has to be relevant to all society today, not just one particular part of it. I'm delighted with the panel discussion today focusing on your heritage, your story. The iDoc that Zulfiya produced as part of her MA research has really helped us understand the importance of wider audiences and the lived experience of everyone around us, both as individuals and collectively. Lived experience speaks directly to our definition of archaeology. Archaeology enables us to connect to the world around us. Archaeology helps us question what it means to be human by exploring the traces people leave behind. But so much of archaeology is invisible. So much of the human experience is invisible. So by understanding the context of people's lives today, we can start to understand how to develop stories and narratives in the past. We must reflect our own experiences. We must reflect societies today, if we are to write meaningful narratives and stories about the past. I think the panel discussion today should be fascinating to actually understand how stories can actually be dominated by particular sections of society. How might we unlock that? How might we bring more silent, more marginal voices into our discussions? It's essential to understand how cities and places develop. York's always been a cosmopolitan place, ever since it was founded by the Romans. It's been through Viking periods, it's been through many changes in the medieval period, and now immigration and migration is an important part of its daily life. But how do we bring those voices in to the archaeology we want to talk about? We were delighted to support Zulfiya's work and that of the University of York and the School of Arts and Creative Technologies. Because ultimately, archaeology is about creating cultural value. And if we're to create that cultural value, we need to do it collectively and draw in as many people to the conversation as possible. I hope you enjoy the panel discussion, and I look forward to hearing how it goes. Many thanks.
So now that you've got a better understanding of CBA's involvement in the project and also the introduction that John gave, I'd like to start my journey into the project. And so my name is Zulfiya and my background is in documentary film. I'm not an archaeologist, but I have directed short documentaries in India and also in the US, and I've focused on human-centered stories that include stories of migration. And I've also worked with non-profits, producing videos related to social justice issues. But having practiced more traditional filmmaking, as you can see, I'm holding away a traditional camera in this picture, I started getting more interested in co-creative methods, which is more participatory in nature. And I also learned that the interactive documentary is a form of storytelling that allows for more inclusive practices. And so my interest fits well with CBA's goal of how do we create spaces for people to tell their own stories. And so I conducted the project over these 7 steps. First, I conducted interviews with the CBA staff, and this was to learn about their priorities around storytelling. And then I conducted a literature review, and this was around the background of storytelling in archaeology and heritage. And then based on that information, I developed a film concept, and then recruited participants with the help of the CBA, and we had a workshop with them, a participatory film workshop. And then we co-created these stories together with the participants. And then I designed the interactive documentary, which is an online platform that you will soon see, and I will show you some of the films from that. and then finally concluded the research with feedback and the conclusions. And so the first step was interviewing the CBA. So there were some broad themes that I found with my interviews with the CBA staff. And the first one was about shifting perspectives. And so how can we use storytelling as an agent of change? And this came from the finding that the narratives around archaeology and heritage has historically been dominated by stories of upper middle class white people. And so how do we shift to hear stories from those who are underrepresented? And how can storytelling help shift these perspectives? So making it real, stories of the everyday person was the second main theme that emerged. Like one of the interviewees said, it's the little stories for the little people which is more interesting. And the third main theme was personal heritage means home, family, and community. And so I understood from these interviews that heritage is a very personal concept. And like one of the interviewees said, if I think about my own heritage, then actually I just think about my family, where I've come from. My heritage is my roots. And so as we spoke about ideas around personal heritage and how one feels connected to place, questions emerged around what this connection might mean to someone who's moved to the country. So then the broader question became, how has archaeology and heritage influenced an immigrant's sense of place? So one of the interviewees said, for people who weren't born in this country, how do you get them involved in making the place where they live theirs and feeling that connection? And so how do we move away from colonial narratives, especially because the UK is a melting pot of cultures? And also the CBA's membership is mostly WASP, which is White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. So there's a need to reflect the diversity of UK's population. And so I understood that the CBA really cares about diversity. So where does the interactive documentary, which in short is called the iDoc, where does this all fit in? So the interactive documentary is an emerging form of documentary storytelling that's come with the rise of digital media and the Web 2.0. And the most popular definition was given in 2012 by Aslan Godenzi, who defined it as any project that starts with an intention to document the real and that uses digital interactive technology to realize this intention. So the iDoc allows for more participatory processes with an increased level of individual engagement. And unlike the traditional linear documentary where the viewer passively views a film, the iDoc, on the other hand, is non-linear, and there can be multiple stories, and there's active engagement from the user. And the iDoc also has the scope to be a living documentary, which is also something that Godenzi had termed, where stories can grow and evolve over time. So based on all of this research so far, the film concept that we came up with was that the project would be an iDoc that captures personal everyday stories of archaeology and heritage from immigrants in the UK. And the approach that I took for the project was co-creation. And so co-creation is defined by Katrina Sizek and William Uricchio from MIT in their book Collective Wisdom in 2022, where they say that in co-creation, projects emerge out of process and evolve within communities and with people rather than being made for or about them. And Mandy Rose in 2015 in one of her talks said that co-creation is a shared process of meaning making. So co-creation is creating media through a lens of equity and justice. It challenges inequalities by bringing transparency to the power dynamics that are entrenched in media production. So it's a new space for equitable, inclusive, and democratic practices. And so the next step was to recruit participants to get this project come alive. And so I recruited participants who came from immigrant backgrounds with the help of CBA's networks. And then I had a participatory film workshop with them, which was an online workshop I did because the participants were all over the UK. And we had a series of activities over the course of 2.5 hours. And this was one of the activities we did where we created a word bubble where I asked them to just think about what archaeology meant to each of them or what heritage meant to each of them. And these were some of the words that came about during the activity. And some very interesting terms such as archaeology means culture, connections, stories, experience of being human, and heritage, where people said, again, it means stories, identity, conflict. This was another activity that we did where I asked the participants to draw their personal journey timelines on a piece of paper. And this was in fact based on my own timeline in the UK, as I'm an immigrant myself from India. And so I drew my own timeline, as you can see there in the upper right corner. And then I showed that as a reference, and then based on that, everyone drew their own timelines. And the aim of this activity was to just think about important milestones after migrating to the UK for each person, and also thinking about places that each of these milestones represented. This was another activity we did, and this was sort of to start visualizing some of these ideas. And so here I asked them to pick an image that resonated with each of them. And again, these are actually a collection of images from my own experience, which I revealed to the participants later on. And this was again to help participants think about images that they may want to add in their own stories. And so after the workshop, we started co-creating these stories together. And so we developed individual themes based on each person's stories. And then I developed a script based on the workshop findings and also my conversations with each participant. And then the participants wrote their own narrations. So each person wrote their stories. And then we started gathering personal images and videos. So then we started building this archive of videos and images for each person's story. And then the participants recorded their own narrations and sent me the files. And so once I had a collection of all of these images and videos that we collected along with the audio files, I edited these into short films. And so now I'm going to be showing you some of these video clips that are on the iDoc, so you get a sense of what's out there. So this is Annabelle's, who's here with us today. You'll be hearing from her shortly. But just to give you a sense of what the iDoc has of her story.
Hi everybody, I'm Annabelle. I'm from the United States, and I moved to the UK to study and do my all-time favorite topic and one of the best topics ever, archaeology. So here's my insane, fun, and slightly adventurous archaeological journey, and I hope you enjoy it.
Okay, that was Annabelle's intro video. I'll show you one video where Annabelle talks about her experience.
As a mixed black woman, I never really saw people who looked like me in TV shows and movies. So, my master's dissertation looked at how people of African descent were depicted throughout the Roman Empire. I really like this topic and I'm passionate about it. It's because I'm curious to learn about how people who looked like me were depicted in history. Now, I always thought it was weird that Africans were missing in these depictions of ancient Rome, whether they be TV shows or movies or even documentaries sometimes. And this is because the empire also covered parts of Africa, and it wasn't like, people didn't travel.
Hello, my name is Teresa Yan. I'm from Hong Kong and moved to the UK last year. I'm glad that I have this opportunity to share my story with you. I hope you will enjoy it. Thank you very much.
And this is a video of Teresa's story, one of the videos.
Heritage sites in the UK are so important to me because they are my textbooks of British history and culture. By visiting heritage sites here, I learned a lot about how people live in this country, how people think about this country, and what things they appreciate the most. For example, when I visit Harewood House, which is a country house in West Yorkshire. I discovered that British people in the past loved Chinese painting so much that they used Chinese wallpaper as hairwood. I felt connected to British culture when I saw this as hairwood. Also, since heritage is a subject area of my studies, it gives me an opportunity to connect with amazing people in the UK. I got a chance to work for the Council for British Archaeology during my student placement. As a youth engagement content creator, I make several educational resources for the Young Archaeologists Club, as well as contributed to the Festival of Archaeology this year. The CBA team is super friendly and inclusive. Without learning about heritage, I might not have a chance to be included in this country in a short period of time.
So that was a glimpse of Teresa and Annabelle's stories. And I'll just take you through what the iDoc looks like, which is an online platform called Your Heritage, Your Story. This is the landing page where you can see both the participants' faces. And then if you click on any one of them, you will get into their story page. So for example, this is Annabelle's story page. And these are all images which will take you into one part of her story. They're all short videos. I just showed you one of these. And similarly for Teresa as well, you can see parts of her story which you can navigate in any fashion that you please. And we also have an About Project page. So there's like a menu at the bottom where if you click on About Project, that will give you an idea about the project and its background and all the collaborators involved. And this is what we call the mind map. And this gives you an idea about all of the interactions that are there within the videos and how all of the videos are connected with each other, if you're interested to see that. And yeah, so now I would like to invite Annabelle, who's one of the participants as you saw, and we'd love to know your experience working on the project, Annabelle.
Hi everybody. Yeah, I'm Annabelle. So yeah, I was lucky enough to be one of the participants for this project. I found out about it during one of the digs I was on last year. Someone was forwarded me an email. It's like, I think you might be a good participant or a good candidate for that. I was like, you know what, I think you're right, I'm gonna give it a shot. So I emailed Zulfiya and we had an initial interview and she was like telling me all about it, all about CDA, and I was like, oh yeah, like that sounds like something I would be super interested in. So participating in it was really cool. I really enjoyed the initial workshop. It was a Zoom call with all of us, and we just got to know each other a bit better, got to know where everyone came from, and just their thoughts on everything. And it was really nice. I learned that I should take more photos, like a lot more photos, because during the process, I got to write my own script telling my own story, which was really nice because, just generally speaking, I don't really see or hear people who look like me represented in archaeology, not just in the UK, but like just generally speaking. So I really liked that it gave me some agency over my own story and sharing it. But one of those things was that once I wrote the script, I needed to get photos that would relate to the script. And most of my stuff was back home in the States with my parents. So every other day I was like texting them. I was like, hey, do you have that photo of me like dressed as Indiana Jones when I was like 8? Because that would be great if you can send it to me and find it. So it was a lot of back and forth that way. And then they're like, I can't find it. Will the hat do? And I'm like, can you please just try? I appreciate you. Like, come on. So they did send it because that was like one of the photos that was like included in this. So yeah, just take more photos because you never know when you're going to need them. But excluding that, it was a lot of fun. I learned, I think, more about my own journey while working on this project, because at the time I was working on my master's dissertation, so I was like just focused on that, but I would always come back to this project and it would like have me think about my own journey and how I ended up where I was and everything like that, and how at the time I was in Liverpool, how even being in Liverpool sort of connected me a bit to home. So I really enjoyed that, and also with that, just like how I see and hope archaeology and the heritage sector will move going forward. I think more stories like this, where people who aren't necessarily from the country or even from the country, who don't look like the stereotypical archaeologist or historian, or sharing information, whether it be their own or just academic research, or digging, just generally speaking, because a lot of people that I even work with, because I'm a commercial archaeologist now in the UK, aren't who most people would think as like a stereotypical archaeologist. They're from all different countries, backgrounds, races, religions. It's really cool. It's a bit of everything, and everyone comes together for British archaeology. So I just like hope in the future everyone can see that more frequently, and maybe by doing that, other people who don't aren't like upper middle class or anything like that can be like, you know what, I think I can do that too, because I think it's really important to just share history and archaeology and heritage with everyone, and not really just have it gate kept with one sort of group. So
Thanks, Annabelle. I think it was very insightful to get your perspective, because, I mean, there are challenges in interactive documentaries because it does require a lot of personal commitment from the participants. So Annabelle was very personally committed to tell her story, share her story. So kind of, finding those photographs and connecting back home to get all of those memories it's not easy. So it's a very kind of emerging form of media that we're trying to co-create with the participants. So thanks for sharing that, Annabelle. I'd like to now just sort of conclude with how the research ended. And these were some of the sort of points that came through after I got feedback from the participants, as well as the CBA staff who I had earlier interviewed at the beginning of the research. And so the first thing was the participatory process and the co-creation of the films really encouraged story ownership. Like one of the participants said, I enjoyed the fact that I was able to write the script myself and not really being told what to say and what to leave out. I just like being able to tell my story in my own words. And secondly, also the project helped start to break stereotypes. And so it shows the importance of immigrant stories, and that not everyone in British archaeology and heritage are from the UK. Like one of the participants said, including immigrant stories can break the stereotype that British heritage is for white middle-class people. Thirdly, it also helps tell the non-archaeology story. For example, Annabelle's story and her non-traditional journey to archaeology. And also the stories have their own value in introducing non-traditional approaches to archaeology through an immigrant perspective, which opens up new avenues of engagement in the sector. And we also got feedback that the interactivity helps improve engagement. So the non-linear nature of the stories, where you can pick and choose which film you want to watch, and being able to switch between the two stories was appreciated. And it gave the viewer flexibility in rewatching and seeing similarity and differences in both the participants' journeys. It helps shift dominant narratives. Like one of the respondents said, both the participants shift the viewer from the traditional image of an archaeologist as a white male. It also has helped the CBA change their behaviors, and the project process has influenced CBA's learning and understanding as an organization. So it emphasizes how the IDOC's non-traditional way of presenting archaeology and heritage stories has affected their ways of thinking around storytelling that come from more traditional approaches. And this points to the larger impact that the IDOC process has in organizational thinking and the impact of innovation and creativity on widening perspectives. And finally, it's demonstrated the potential of the IDOC in building inclusive participation in archaeology narratives. And so this is where the research concludes. This is the link if any of you are interested in watching the rest of the film. It's yourheritageyourstory.github.io. And yeah, thank you for your time. We'll now just sit here for some questions. I'll hand it back to John.